I didn't find out because he sat me down and told me the truth. I didn't find out because he felt guilty or decided to be honest. I found out because he got careless. That detail matters, because it tells you everything about the kind of man Eric really was. It was a regular Tuesday night, the kind of night that blends into every other night when you've been married for over a decade. No fights. No tension. No dramatic silence. Just routine. I was on the couch folding laundry, socks piled on one side, shirts on the other, the TV playing some forgettable show I wasn't even really watching. Eric was in the shower, humming like nothing in the world was wrong. That's the part that still messes with me. He was completely relaxed. His iPad was on the coffee table, screen dark, face down. I wasn't snooping. I didn't have that kind of relationship with him. We shared passwords. We shared accounts. We shared a life. I had no reason to go digging. Then the screen lit up. Just for a second. Long enough for one line to appear. Draft divorce strategy, confidential. At first, my brain flat out rejected it. Like it was a typo my eyes made up. Or some weird spam message. Or a work thing that had nothing to do with us. I remember actually blinking, like maybe my vision was playing tricks on me. It wasn't. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. That slow, heavy thud you feel when something inside you knows your life just split into a before and an after. I told myself not to touch it. I told myself to wait. I told myself there had to be another explanation. But curiosity wasn't even the real force here. It was survival instinct. I picked up the iPad. No lock. No hesitation. No warning signs. Just his inbox, open and exposed like he never imagined I'd be the one holding it. That email wasn't alone. There was a whole chain. Dates going back months. Conversations with an attorney whose name I didn't recognize. Calm, professional language that felt almost insulting in how neat it was. Bullet points. Attachments. Notes about timelines. He hadn't just thought about divorce. He had planned it. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment decision. This wasn't therapy gone wrong. This was calculated. Strategic. Treated like a business exit. The words didn't sound like my husband. They sounded like a stranger who happened to know every detail of my life. He referred to me as the spouse. Our home was the primary residence. Our marriage was the relationship. 11 years reduced to legal shorthand. My hands were shaking, but I kept reading. I couldn't stop. Each line felt like peeling back another layer of something rotten I didn't know was there. Then I saw the part that made my stomach drop. Given that most assets are currently under joint control, timing will be critical. Joint control. That phrase kept echoing in my head. Joint accounts. Joint investments. Joint property. Joint savings. My contributions. My work. My sacrifices. Suddenly it all made sense. The sudden politeness over the past few months. The lack of arguments. The way he'd been oddly agreeable, almost distant but pleasant. He wasn't trying to fix things. He was trying not to tip me off. Because the plan depended on me staying unaware. I realized something in that moment that hurt worse than the idea of divorce itself. He didn't just want to leave me. He wanted to leave me empty-handed. He wanted to move first, file first, control the narrative, and lock things down before I even knew what was happening. The emails talked about positioning, leverage, and minimizing exposure. Exposure. Like I was a liability. I sat there on that couch, laundry forgotten, heart racing, while the shower water ran down the hall like nothing had changed. Eric was singing quietly to himself. Relaxed. Comfortable. Confident. That was the moment something inside me snapped into focus. I didn't cry. That surprised me. I didn't feel hysterical or dramatic or weak. There was no movie-style breakdown. No shaking sobs. No urge to confront him, throw the iPad at his head, or demand answers. Instead, I felt cold. Clear. Focused. It was like my emotions shut off and my brain stepped in and said, okay, now we think. Because I understood something very important right then. He thought he was the only one playing chess. He thought I was still folding laundry, watching bad TV, unaware that my entire future was being negotiated behind my back. What he didn't know was that I wasn't naive. I wasn't dependent. I wasn't powerless. I had my own income, my own financial literacy, my own understanding of how assets, timing, and control actually work. And unlike him, I hadn't tipped my hand. I closed the iPad carefully, set it back exactly where it was, folded the last shirt, turned off the TV. When he came out of the shower, towel around his waist, smiling like everything was normal, I smiled back. I asked him about his day. I laughed at his jokes. I kissed him goodnight. He had no idea that while he was planning his exit, I was already planning my response. Because once you know someone is trying to outmaneuver you, the worst thing you can do is react emotionally. The smartest thing you can do is stay quiet and start moving pieces. He thought he married someone who would be blindsided. He was wrong. And that mistake was about to cost him everything he thought he had under control. I didn't confront him. That part was intentional. Everything in me wanted to throw the iPad at the bathroom door and demand answers. 11 years of marriage, reduced to bullet points and timelines in an email. Anyone else would have exploded. I didn't. Not because I was weak, but because I understood something very important in that moment. The second Eric realized I knew, the advantage would disappear. So I stayed quiet. I played normal so well it almost scared me. I laughed at the same dumb jokes. Asked him how work was going. Complained about traffic. Cooked dinner like I always did, standing at the stove while he scrolled on his phone like nothing in our life was about to blow up. Every smile was calculated. Every casual conversation was camouflage. Because silence buys time. And time is leverage. That Wednesday morning, after he left for work, I didn't sit around spiraling. I got up early, showered, got dressed, and made calls. Not emotional calls. Strategic ones. First was a financial advisor. Not the one we shared, not the guy Eric golfed with and trusted. I called someone from my past, someone who knew me before the marriage, before everything became ours. I didn't dump the whole story on him. I didn't need to. I just said enough to make one thing clear. I needed options. Quiet ones. Then I called an attorney. A real one. Not a friend of a friend. Someone sharp, experienced, and very familiar with divorce law in our state. I booked a consultation under my own name and paid with my own card. No paper trail Eric would notice. By Friday afternoon, I had clarity. And clarity is dangerous if you're on the wrong side of it. Eric thought he was the planner, the strategist, the one thinking 10 steps ahead. But what he didn't understand was how much of our financial foundation was built on assumptions he never bothered to verify. He assumed joint control meant equal power. It didn't. The savings account he thought was shared money was technically funded by my inheritance. Legally traceable. Documented. Protected. The investment portfolio he loved to brag about at dinners with friends had started with my capital. His contributions came later, after the groundwork was already mine. The LLC tied to the rental property? Filed with ownership percentages he never fully read. He trusted me to handle the paperwork. Big mistake. None of this was hidden. None of it was shady. It was all there in black and white. He just never imagined I'd need to use it. So I did exactly what the law allowed. No tricks. No illegal moves. Just precision. I separated accounts where separation was permitted. I reallocated funds where ownership was clear. I secured documents, backed up records, and made sure everything was clean, compliant, and airtight. I moved assets into structures designed to protect them, not to hide them, to safeguard what was already mine. It wasn't dramatic. It was paperwork. Phone calls. Signatures. Quiet clicks of a keyboard while the house was empty. By the time I was done, the financial landscape looked nothing like the one Eric had been planning around. The exit strategy he thought was airtight suddenly had holes everywhere. And he didn't even know it yet. That was the part that almost made me laugh. All weekend, he was nicer, more attentive, suggesting date night, complimenting my cooking, telling me how much he appreciated everything I did. He smiled more, touched my arm when he spoke, played the role of a loving husband like he was rehearsing for an audience. I smiled back, because I knew what was coming. I knew the filing was close. I could feel it in the way he watched me, the way his patience felt rehearsed, temporary. And the irony? He thought he was in control. Thought I was clueless. Thought the board was set exactly how he'd planned it. What he didn't know was that while he was waiting for the perfect moment to pull the trigger, I had already flipped the board over and reset the game. He was about to walk into a divorce he thought he designed. Instead, he was stepping into one he no longer controlled. And I was ready. The moment the certified envelope arrived, everything Eric thought he controlled started slipping. He acted calm, almost rehearsed, like this was a meeting he had practiced in his head 100 times. He sat me down at the kitchen table, the same table where we had eaten dinners, signed birthday cards, talked about vacations. Now it was a stage. He slid the envelope forward, cleared his throat, and spoke in that careful tone people use when they think they are being reasonable. He talked about how we had grown apart, how life changes, how this was no one's fault. He even said he wanted things to be fair, which almost made me laugh out loud. He kept using soft words to dress up a hard plan. Respect, resolution, mutual, all the classics. He thought if he stayed calm, if he kept control of the room, I would just nod along and accept it. So I let him talk. I watched him closely, not just listening to the words, but to his body. The way he sat back, relaxed. The way he glanced at his attorney like a safety net. This was supposed to be his moment. The payoff for months of quiet planning. Then he opened the financial pages. That is when the shift happened. At first it was subtle. A pause that lasted half a second too long. His eyes flicked back up to the top of the page, then down again. He flipped to the next section, expecting confirmation. Instead, he got confusion. The numbers were wrong. Not slightly off. Fundamentally different. The accounts he had counted on were missing. Not frozen. Not delayed. Gone from the layout he had memorized. The balances he expected were smaller, segmented, redistributed. The neat picture he had built his strategy around suddenly looked messy and unfamiliar. You could see the math running behind his eyes. This was not how it was supposed to go. He tried to cover it at first. Laughed lightly. Said something about paperwork being messy. Claimed it was probably a clerical issue. He looked at his attorney for backup. The attorney did not smile. That was when the color drained from Eric's face. He asked for a private word. Stood up too fast. Walked into the other room with his lawyer, leaving the door half closed. I stayed where I was, hands folded, listening without trying. The voices on the other side were sharp and fast. No pleasantries now. No careful tone. Just clipped questions and frustration. I caught fragments. How is this possible? When did this happen? That should not be separated yet. Did you check the filings? Every sentence confirmed what I already knew. He had built his plan on assumptions. He assumed I was passive. He assumed I did not understand the law. He assumed I would freeze once he made the first move. He came back into the kitchen a different man. Gone was the calm confidence. His eyes were wide. His jaw was tight. His voice sounded thinner when he asked, "What did you do?" That question mattered. Not because he deserved an answer, but because of what it revealed. He already knew something had changed. He just could not believe I was the one who changed it. I leaned back and said the truth. Simple. Calm. No emotion attached. I protected myself. That sentence landed harder than yelling ever could. You could see the panic hit him in waves. First disbelief. Then anger. Then fear. Because the moment he realized I had moved first, he realized the game was no longer one-sided. The divorce he had carefully planned was designed to corner me. To overwhelm me with timing, paperwork, pressure. to make me settle quickly just to escape the stress. Now that advantage was gone. The field was level. And for someone who expects to win by default, a level field feels like sabotage. He started accusing me of things that sounded suspiciously like confessions. He said I was manipulative, calculated, cold, that I had gone behind his back, that I had betrayed him. I did not interrupt. Because here's the thing. Planning to defend yourself is not betrayal. Responding to a threat is not manipulation. He was angry because his plan failed, not because I did something wrong. What he could not stand was losing control of the narrative. He had imagined this moment ending with me stunned, scrambling, asking questions. Instead, he was the one asking them. He was the one off balance. He had expected to walk away with security and leave me picking up pieces. Instead, he was facing uncertainty, legal complexity, risk. He planned to leave me broke. I planned to leave intact. That difference matters. As the meeting ended, the power dynamic had completely shifted. He was no longer the man delivering news. He was reacting, adjusting, rethinking. His attorney was already talking about next steps, revisions, delays. All because I refused to be a silent participant in my own downfall. That day did not end with shouting or slammed doors. It ended with quiet tension and a realization that could not be undone. He had underestimated me. And once that truth was out in the open, nothing in the process would ever feel safe for him again. The end of the divorce felt almost surreal because of how quiet it was. No shouting matches. No slammed doors. No dramatic courtroom scenes like you see in movies. Just paperwork, meetings, signatures, and a steady sense of finality. That silence mattered. It showed how much the power dynamic had shifted. Eric went into this expecting chaos from me. Tears. Begging. Maybe anger he could point to and use against me. What he got instead was calm, and that threw him completely off balance. He had imagined the divorce as a transaction where he walked away financially comfortable while I scrambled to rebuild. That was the version of the story he had rehearsed in his head. The real version didn't match. When the final numbers were laid out, it became clear he wasn't walking away with half of everything. He was walking away with what the law allowed, nothing more. And that difference mattered. It wasn't about greed. It was about expectation. He expected entitlement. What he received was reality. What struck me the most wasn't his disappointment. It was what he chose to comment on afterward. He never once said sorry for planning to drain shared accounts or for secretly strategizing behind my back. He didn't apologize for treating our marriage like a hostile takeover. The only regret he expressed, indirectly and carefully, was that he hadn't anticipated my response. That told me everything about his mindset. In his world, the mistake wasn't the betrayal. The mistake was miscalculation. That realization brought clarity instead of pain. It confirmed that my instincts had been right to stay quiet and act deliberately. If I had confronted him the moment I found out, he would have adjusted his plan. He would have moved faster. He would have tried to lock things down before I could protect myself. My silence wasn't weakness. It was leverage. And that leverage allowed the process to stay clean, legal, and controlled. People love to romanticize marriage as a bond built entirely on trust. And that's true up to a point. Trust is the foundation. But when one person quietly breaks it while smiling across the dinner table, trust alone isn't enough to protect you. What protects you then is awareness. Clarity. The ability to separate emotion from action. That's the part nobody prepares you for. We're taught how to love, not how to respond when love is being weaponized against us. I didn't walk away feeling like I had defeated him. That wasn't the victory. The victory was walking away without being diminished. Without losing the financial stability I had worked years to build. Without internalizing his betrayal as a reflection of my worth. I didn't take anything that wasn't rightfully mine. I simply refused to let him take what wasn't his. There's a difference between winning and surviving intact. Winning implies someone else has to lose. Surviving intact means you leave with your foundation solid, your dignity preserved, and your future still yours to shape. That's what mattered to me. I didn't need revenge. I needed security. And I needed the knowledge that I could trust myself to handle the worst quietly and confidently. When Eric finally realized that his plan hadn't worked, the panic was real. Not loud, not explosive, but sharp and contained. It showed up in his tone, his rushed questions, his sudden need for reassurance from his attorney. Control had been his comfort zone. Balance felt like a threat because it meant he no longer held the upper hand. For someone used to steering the narrative, that loss of control felt like failure. I didn't correct his accusations when he called me calculated. I didn't defend myself against claims of manipulation. Those words didn't sting because they weren't accurate. Planning within the law isn't manipulation. Protecting yourself isn't betrayal. It's self-respect. And self-respect doesn't require an audience or approval. The quiet ending of the divorce reflected the quiet strength it took to get there. No grand speeches. No dramatic exits. Just a clean break and the knowledge that I had responded, not reacted. That distinction matters. Reacting gives power away. Responding keeps it with you. In the end, the story wasn't about him filing for divorce. It was about what happened after. He expected fear. He got preparation. He expected compliance. He got boundaries. And when he panicked, it wasn't because he lost me. It was because he lost the advantage he thought he had. That's the lesson I carry forward. Not that people will never betray you, but that you are capable of handling it when they do. Calmly. Legally. Strategically. Without losing yourself in the process. He filed. And then he panicked. Because for the first time, the person he underestimated wasn't scrambling to catch up. She was already standing exactly where she needed to be. If this story made you think twice, you already know why you're here. Like the video, subscribe to Secret Twist Stories, and drop a comment with your thoughts. Because around here, the truth always shows up, just when people least expect it.